Have you ever wondered how saying no to an opportunity could actually bring you much more success? Today, you'll hear the story of Ian, a businessman who had to make the toughest decision of his life, choosing between easy money or his values. Throughout this video, you'll find out how he found the strength to say no to a multi-million dollar partnership, resisting the pressure from shareholders and executives. More than that, you'll understand how that choice led him to something far greater than immediate profit, the true freedom to follow his purpose. So, get ready to be inspired and discover how saying no at the right time can be the first step towards success that's truly worth it. Let's go. Ian was sitting in his leather chair, which had long since lost its comfort. In front of him, piles of documents, reports, and screens glowing in bright, harsh colors as if mocking his despair. The meeting room seemed to suffocate him more with every decision that had to be made. His eyes burned, red from exhaustion, and his hands trembled as he held a cup of coffee for the fourth time that day, trying to make up for the lack of sleep with frantic doses of caffeine. The shareholders didn't care. They wanted numbers, rising charts, targets met. His fellow board members kept repeating the same mantra. We need quick decisions, Ian. We need to cut costs, raise profits. There's no room for hesitation. And the dilemma? The dilemma tore him apart inside, because he knew that the decisions that would make him look like a financial hero to many went against his own principles. A partnership that would skyrocket the company's revenue, but hurt small communities. A choice that would please investors, but wound his own soul. And so, Ian was crushed between two worlds. The immediate financial success, tempting and looming like a shadow that couldn't be ignored, and his values, which screamed for justice, for doing the right thing, even if it was harder. Each decision seemed to tear away a piece of his integrity, leaving him emptier and more anxious. After an especially tough meeting, in which he was pressured to cut costs on a socially responsible project to meet the ruthless demands of shareholders, Ian felt he could no longer carry this burden alone. It was as if an unbearable weight was slowly pushing him down, and he desperately needed to find a way to breathe again. It was at that moment, leaving the office with slumped shoulders and a heavy heart, that Ian happened to run into an old mentor. The man, noticing Ian's condition, asked what was going on. At first, Ian resisted, smiling and saying everything was fine, but it didn't take long for the mentor to see through the facade. You need something beyond quick answers and temporary fixes, he said. And then he suggested something unusual. Seek out Monk Jin. He won't give you answers, but maybe he'll help you find your own. It was this simple yet profound advice that drove Ian to get in his car that night and drive for hours until he reached the small stone temple where Monk Jin lived, surrounded by the peace Ian so desperately sought. Ian arrived at the temple at dawn, when the moonlight draped the stone ground with a silver veil. He parked the car and stood still for a few moments, observing the simplicity of the place. The old wooden door, weathered by time, was slightly ajar. The soft scent of incense floated in the air, and the silence was deep, almost tangible, as if every breath he took could disrupt the delicate balance of the moment. Hesitant, Ian stepped inside and was greeted by an atmosphere of calm, so far removed from the chaos of the corporate world he faced every day. Monk Jin sat in a meditative position, his eyes closed, hands resting in his lap. His face radiated serenity, like the surface of a tranquil lake. When he opened his eyes, a gentle light reflected in his dark gaze, and a calm smile spread across his face. "Welcome, Ian," he said, his voice warm, as if it could heat the air around him. "I've been expecting you." The monk's simple and direct words made Ian feel seen, as if all his anguish had been laid bare. He took a deep breath, almost choking on his anxiety, and began to explain the dilemma that had brought him there. He spoke of the overwhelming pressure from the shareholders, the relentless expectations of his colleagues, and the devastating conflict between wanting to keep the company financially secure and the need to preserve his own integrity. Monk Jin listened in silence, never interrupting. Only a slight nod of his head indicated that he was following every word Ian spoke, every emotion laced into his sentences. When Ian finished, he felt an initial relief, as though pouring out his worries had lifted some of the weight from his shoulders. Then Monk Jin began to speak, but not with advice or solutions. He spoke in questions, as if each one was a lantern illuminating a different corner of Ian's heart. "Ian?" he began softly. Have you ever asked yourself what truly weighs on you more, the need to please others or the need to follow what you believe is right? The question hung in the air like an unexpected breeze. Ian fell silent for a moment, trying to process. The need to please. Yes, it was true that he had conditioned himself to seek approval from everyone around him. But doing what was right? Shouldn't that be more important? And then a disconcerting truth hit him. He no longer knew what right even meant. I don't know, Ian replied, his voice trembling, almost a whisper. Sometimes it feels like everything is mixed together. The numbers, the expectations, my values. I don't know what weighs more anymore. Everything seems urgent and vital. The monk nodded, understanding. Urgency can be an illusion, Ian. When pressed for time, we often rush without knowing where we are headed. Tell me, what would allow you to sleep peacefully tonight? What would quiet your restless thoughts? Ian closed his eyes for a moment, trying to imagine the answer. But his mind was clouded, and the layers of obligations, expectations, and conflicting choices blurred his thoughts. He realized, with a pang of frustration, that he had become so immersed in meeting deadlines and hitting targets that he had forgotten how to find his own peace. Monk Jin, sensing the confusion weighing heavily on Ian, allowed for an intentional pause. The silence that followed was comforting, almost as if the air itself was giving Ian the space to find his own answer. Then, in his soft yet steady voice, the monk guided the conversation to something deeper, a distant memory. Ian, when you founded your company, what were your dreams for it? What did you want to build beyond profit? The monk's words echoed in Ian's mind like a call to the past. He hadn't thought about that in a long time. The question seemed out of place at first, as if it didn't belong to the present moment, so crowded with reports and strategies. But then, gradually, like layers of fog lifting to reveal the morning sun, Ian began to remember. He closed his eyes for a moment and returned to that day, years ago, when the company was nothing more than an idea nurtured by dreams. Back then, success wasn't measured only by the money in the bank or satisfied shareholders. He wanted to create something meaningful, something that could change lives, leave a legacy. He remembered the youthful excitement he felt when he opened the office doors for the first time. The hopes, the noble goals of building a company that was innovative, that cared for people, that had a positive impact. There was passion in every choice, in every contract signed, and he was proud of every small step forward. I wanted to build something with purpose, Ian murmured, as if the words were fragile. Something that brought value, not just money, that impacted lives in a positive way. Monk Jin smiled, noticing the nostalgic glow in Ian's eyes. And what changed, Ian? When did that vision start to fade? Ian felt a tightness in his chest. He knew the answer, but saying it out loud was difficult. It had happened over the years. With every pressure to increase revenue, every meeting focused on profitability, and every commitment that pulled him further away from his original purpose. The race for financial success became an avalanche, burying his initial intentions under cold, heavy snow. It was an almost imperceptible shift, a small detour that seemed insignificant at first, but over time led him far from the place he had imagined. I think it was when I started caring more about the numbers and less about the people, Ian admitted, his voice stronger now, as if saying the words was setting him free. The pressure to grow, it took over me. I stopped thinking about why I started all this. The monk nodded, maintaining his contemplative calm. Ian, true success is not just about growing outward, but also growing inward. It's about remembering the purpose that drove you to take that first step and continuing to follow that path, even when it's not the most profitable. Because profit, like the wind, is fleeting. But the impact you leave on the lives around you, that is the echo that remains. Monk Jin's words began to plant a seed of understanding within Ian. He realized that he had been so focused on the immediate, on the monthly gains and losses, that he had lost sight of what really mattered, the reason he had chosen to start his company in the first place. And in that moment, he felt the weight of his moral dilemma in a different way, not as a prison with no escape, but as an opportunity to rediscover the path he had lost. The wind blew gently around them, and Ian stood gazing at the mountain as Monk Jin's words echoed within him. It felt as though each gust of wind carried away a little of his doubt, his anguish. But the newfound clarity also brought with it a new challenge. the courage to follow the harder path, the path of integrity in a world that seemed to only reward shortcuts. Sensing Ian's unrest, Monk Jin guided him back inside the temple, where the light was softer, and the scent of incense continued to calm the senses. They sat down again, and the monk, with his serene gaze, posed another question, like a seed waiting to sprout. Ian, you fear that bearing the weight of honesty will stop you from reaching your goals. But what do you believe you'll find at the end of this climb if you embrace honesty as both your heaviest burden and your greatest strength? The question was simple, yet powerful. Ian tried to envision himself at the top of that metaphorical mountain. He imagined reaching it without the weight of external pressures, without the compromises that had corroded his original purpose. He closed his eyes and for a moment saw himself standing at the summit. A company he was proud to lead, employees treated with dignity, decisions that positively impacted the community. It wasn't an easy view to reach, but it was beautiful. And it was the kind of view that made the journey worthwhile. I think, at the end of this climb, Ian began, hesitant at first, but then firm, I'd find something I haven't had in a long time. Peace. True pride in what I've built. A company that reflects who I am, not just what is financially beneficial. The monk nodded, the smile on his face reflecting the soft morning light that now filtered through the temple. Ian, the climb is steep and painful because it challenges your limits. But the reward is not just at the top. It's in every step you take, bearing the weight of what truly matters to you. It's in choosing truth over ease. The hard path is what gives you deep roots, and deep roots support trees that grow beyond the storms. Ian felt as though something had finally shifted inside him. There was pain in accepting this burden, but there was also freedom. The freedom of knowing he could choose his journey, even if it was more arduous, and that this was not a weakness but a strength. The weight of honesty wasn't an anchor pulling him down. It was the anchor that would keep him grounded, no matter how fierce the storm ahead. So, what I need is courage, Ian said, with a sigh that mixed relief and determination. Courage to carry the right weight, even if it's the hardest one. Monk Jin smiled and, placing a hand on Ian's shoulder, said, Yes, Ian. The courage to choose the path that speaks to your heart, to your true purpose. When you accept the weight of integrity, it stops being a burden and becomes a part of you. It gives you the strength to climb without losing yourself along the way. Ian felt a new strength, as though something had awakened inside him. He knew the pressure wouldn't disappear, that the challenges would continue. But now, he had something he had been missing. The conviction that the steepest climb was the only one worth making. The silence in the temple was so deep, it seemed to hold all the answers Ian had been searching for throughout his life. He looked at Monk Jin, who was now gazing at the horizon, as if he could see beyond the mountains and forests to places Ian couldn't yet imagine. That morning brought a new lightness to Ian's heart, a sense of clarity, as though the clouds of doubt that had enveloped him for so long had finally lifted. I know what I need to do, Ian said, finally breaking the silence. His voice was calm but firm, as though the words came from a deep and unshakable place within him. I will follow the path of integrity, even if it's harder, even if I have to face opposition and pressure from all sides. Monk Jin turned his gaze back to Ian, and his eyes shone with a serene pride. Remember, Ian, true strength lies in carrying what is essential. The climb is arduous, yes, and each decision will test your conviction. But know that by keeping the weight of honesty close to your heart, you are building something that no wind can tear down. And when you reach the top, the view will be worthy of every difficult step you took. Ian felt a peace inside him, a peace he hadn't felt in years. There was courage in his decision, the courage to face not just the world around him, but also his own weaknesses and fears. He knew the climb would be long, and that maintaining his integrity might even slow down the financial growth that so many around him demanded. But now, he saw beyond that. He saw the journey as a chance to build something that would not only thrive in the present, but have deep roots capable of withstanding any storm that came. Before leaving, Ian bowed deeply to Monk Jin, thanking him not just for his words, but for the clarity he had found. Thank you, he said, for showing me the weight that's truly worth carrying. The monk simply nodded, as if knowing that Ian already had all the answers he needed within himself. Remember, Ian, the balance between success and integrity is not a straight line, but a dance. Embrace the weight that strengthens you, and your journey will be one of meaning and peace. With that, Ian stood, feeling taller and stronger than when he had arrived. He left the temple and walked to his car, looking once more at the distant mountain. Now, it no longer seemed so threatening, but rather like a challenge worthy of being overcome. As he drove back to the city, the sunlight illuminated the road ahead, and he knew that although the journey would be difficult, he had finally found the direction he had always been seeking. He was ready to face the pressures, the dilemmas, and to carry the weight that would make his climb worth it. More than ever, Ian was determined to lead his company and his life in alignment with the values that defined his true success. And so, with renewed courage and a clear purpose, Ian began his climb. The path was steep, but now he knew the weight of integrity was his true strength. Weeks had passed since Ian's visit to Monk Jin. His life had changed, not in its complexity or pressure, but in how he carried its weight. At the office, decisions still had to be made quickly, and shareholders remained hungry for profits. But now, every choice Ian made was guided by a clarity he had never experienced before. There was a peace inside him that steered him, even amidst the chaos. The pressure hadn't disappeared, but it was different. It was no longer an enemy, but a tool to carve the path he wanted to walk. Ian called a meeting with his team and the key shareholders. That day, his presence radiated a quiet confidence, an energy that filled the room with a contagious calm. He spoke sincerely about the new vision for the company, a renewed commitment to its original purpose, to create a positive impact in the community and to do business ethically. His eyes gleamed with passion, and his voice didn't waver as he spoke about a future where profit and purpose didn't have to be mutually exclusive. Some shareholders reacted with surprise and skepticism. Others, frankly, with resistance. But Ian wasn't discouraged. He was ready for the challenge, knowing that the path to the top was steep and that facing opposition was just part of that climb. He made it clear that while financial goals remained important, there was a line he would not cross, and that line was the integrity he now embraced as his core strength. In the days that followed, difficult decisions had to be made. Ian turned down a partnership that, while lucrative, went against his values. He reinforced the company's work ethic across all sectors, fostering an environment where every employee felt part of something greater. Gradually, the company's culture began to shift. There was more meaning in every goal, more purpose in every plan. The challenge was constant, and the path would never be easy. Many nights, Ian still found himself hunched over reports, wrestling with how to balance success with principles. But now, each time he felt the pressure trying to pull him away from his purpose, he would close his eyes and remember Monk Jin's words. The climb is steep, but the weight of integrity is your strength. The burden is what keeps you steady. And amidst those challenges, he found moments of deep satisfaction. The nights when he came home and sat in silence, no longer feeling the inner conflict that used to haunt him. The days when he saw the positive impact of his decisions on the people around him, knowing that even if profit wasn't immediate, he was building something that truly mattered. Ian was still in the middle of his journey. The top of the mountain was not yet in sight, but he knew that every step taken with courage brought him closer. And now, carrying the weight that mattered, he had the certainty that when he reached the summit, the view would be more beautiful than any financial chart could show. And so, Ian continued to climb, one step at a time, firm and unwavering, guided by the weight of what was right. Because he had learned from Monk Jin that true success wasn't just at the top of the mountain, but in the journey of carrying it with integrity and strength. Months later, on a quiet autumn morning, Ian found himself walking through a forest near his office. The company had thrived in ways he could never have predicted, not just financially, but in its spirit and impact. Challenges still arose, but they were now met with a quiet confidence that came from a deep place, the place where Ian had rediscovered who he truly was and what he wanted for his company and his life. As he walked, listening to the sound of dry leaves crunching beneath his feet, Ian's mind was at peace, but alert. Monk Jin's words still echoed, like an internal mantra reminding him of the right choices. Carrying the weight of integrity had strengthened him in ways he had never imagined. He had found his courage, and with it, a success that was more than just numbers. It was a success that touched lives. He stopped beside a small stream winding through the trees. The clear water flowed gently, weaving around stones and obstacles without losing its direction. Ian crouched down and touched the water, feeling its fluidity, the way it moved without hesitation, without resistance, always staying true to its course. He thought about the metaphor of climbing the mountain and realized that life, too, was like that stream, full of curves, difficulties, and obstacles, but always moving forward, flowing around what needed to be bypassed, overcoming what needed to be surmounted. And then Ian smiled. Not a smile of victory, but of understanding. The journey was far from over, and he knew there would be more moments of doubt, of struggle, and of hard choices. But now he had a voice inside him that could not be ignored, a voice as clear as the sound of the stream passing through his hands. It was the voice of his integrity, the voice that told him to keep climbing, carrying the weight that balanced and strengthened him. Ian stood up, looked at the blue sky above the trees, and felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey he had traveled, for the lessons he had learned, and for the renewed commitment to lead with purpose. He knew that as long as he remained true to that inner voice, the path ahead, no matter how steep, would always lead him to a place where he could look back and feel proud, not just of what he built, but of who he chose to be during the climb. And so, with steady steps and a light heart, Ian continued to walk, like the stream, like the mountain, like the wind that always finds its way forward. As Ian walked through the forest, the rhythm of his steps matched the steady, determined beat of his heart. He knew his journey was far from perfect, and that, many times, he would still face temptations to stray from the path, to prioritize profit over integrity, to give in to the pressure of those seeking easy shortcuts. But now there was a fundamental difference. He was present in his journey, fully aware of his choices. Returning to the office, Ian found his team gathered for an important discussion. He could feel the air thick with expectation and anxiety. Crucial decisions were about to be made, and everyone knew it. He greeted them with a glance, taking in each focused face, and felt a genuine connection with every person in the room. These were the faces of people who believed in something greater, who were willing to build a future not just for themselves, but for a shared purpose. Ian began to speak. His voice was calm but resolute. He didn't need fiery speeches or empty promises. He just needed to speak the truth. "I know we're all concerned about what lies ahead," he began, letting his words settle into the room. "But I want you to know that the decisions we make together won't be based solely on numbers or fleeting opportunities. They will be based on values, on the values that have brought us this far." The silence that followed his words was heavy, but not with tension. It was the weight of understanding, of acceptance, of the certainty that they were all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. The late-day sunlight began filtering through the window, casting long, golden shadows across his office floor. Ian thought about how each day was a new climb, and how determined he was to carry with him the weight of what truly mattered: ethics, respect, purpose. Because, in the end, success wasn't just about reaching the top, but about how you chose to make the journey. So were you able to see how true success goes far beyond numbers? Ian's story shows us that sometimes you have to have the courage to say no to the easy path and yes to your values. Because in the end, that's what truly helps us grow, both as people and as professionals. If this video gave you any insights, if it inspired you, or made you reflect on your own decisions, don't forget to leave a like. It's crucial for more people to find this content and be impacted by it too. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this one, and share this video with someone you know who needs to hear this. Who knows, this message could change their life too. Let's go together on this journey of conscious choices and true success.